And this is our angle theta. The side directly across from it is the opposite side. Side beside it is the adjacent, and the longest side, or the side across from the right angle, is called the hypotenuse. We all remember those terms? Or ringing bells in your head? So sine, the sine ratio, sine theta is what side over what side? Remember SOHCAHTOA? It's the SO part. What's O and H? Opposite and hypotenuse. The sine is opposite over the hypotenuse. Cosine is the ka. What two sides? Adjacent over the hypotenuse. And tangent is the toa. Opposite over adjacent. Those are the primary trig ratios. Everybody's seen those. You can use them. There are also the reciprocals, which you probably have not seen. Reciprocal means 1 over. So if you take 1 over sine theta, you get the cosecant ratio. 1 over cosine is the secant ratio. And 1 over tan is the cotan ratio. I will give you a formula sheet so you don't have to write down any of these on your study guide. Okay? Actually, if you look on the inside of your book, I think it's the front cover or the back cover, it actually has a formula sheet you'll get, and it has all this stuff on it. So 1 over sine, cosecant, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So if I said, so what side over what side is 1 over the sine? This cosecant ratio. Basically, you just flip all these ones. So the cosecant, which is 1 over sine, would be the hypotenuse over the opposite side. I'm just flipping the one from above. The secant, which is 1 over cosine, would be what over what? Hypotenuse over adjacent. And the cotan would be the adjacent over the op. I don't really remember those. I just remember the primary ones and then figure everything else out from there. But hey, there they are. Okay. Because we are on a coordinate system, an XY coordinate system, you can write all this in terms of X and Y. So sine theta, right? This would be your X, this would be your Y, and this is R. We call it R because really, and you're going to see tomorrow, we're talking, don't draw the circle. We're talking about a circle. So R is actually the radius of that circle, but don't draw that. You don't need it for now. Okay, so that's why it's called R. And then the X and Y represent the coordinates of this point right here. X, Y. I can write all of these in terms of X and Y. I never do. I usually just sketch it out and use the op over adjacent, but it's totally your call. So if sine, which we said was opposite over hypotenuse, this is your angle, this is your angle. Opposite is over here, hypotenuse is there, and adjacent is there. So sine would be what letter over what letter? Y over R. Cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse, which would be X over R. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, which is Y over X. And then the reciprocals, cosecant is abbreviated CSC. That's 1 over sine. You just flip all those. R over Y. Secant, which is 1 over cosine, is R over X. And secant is SEC. And cotan, which is 1 over tan, is X over Y. Okay. They say you should memorize those formulas. I've never memorized those formulas in my life. No need to. If you know SOHCAHTOA, you can figure out all this stuff. All right, and we're gonna do it a lot. So yeah, don't memorize it. If you don't have to memorize something in math, there's no point in doing it. There's enough you have to memorize. So yeah. All right, flipping the page. Okay. Now, we're going to look at what their values are in each quadrant because it does change, positive and negative. So if we look at quadrant 1, and here's your triangle, is x positive or negative in quadrant 1? Positive, right? Here's our 0, so we've gone this way to the right, so it has to be positive. And we've gone up, so y is positive as well, right? They're both positive. Positive, positive. And instead, sine is opposite over r. Oh, sorry. And r, that's a measure of distance, so it has to be positive, right? And you'll see, if you use Pythagorean theorem, x squared plus y squared, it would have to be positive. So r is always positive. Okay. Sine is y over r, or opposite over hypotenuse. Positive number divided by a positive number, therefore it should be positive. Sine is always positive in the first quadrant. Cosine is adjacent x over the hypotenuse r. I'm just going to write the x and the r and stuff for simplicity. Those are all positive, so they would be positive. And tangent, what do you think it's going to be? Are there any negative? Is x or y negative in this quadrant? No, so everything's positive in this quadrant. Okay? In the first quadrant, sine, cosine, and tan are all positive. After that, things change. So if we go to quadrant 2, now we've gone to the left. This is our x. If you go to the left, those are negative numbers. Our x value is going to be negative. We've still gone up, so our y value will be positive. And r is always positive. All right. So sine, is sine positive or negative? Positive, because it's y over r, right? I'm just going to put the symbols, whether it's positive or negative. What about cosine? Negative, because it's negative x over r. So it's going to be negative. What about tangent? Negative, because it's y over negative x. So it's negative. So in the second quadrant, cosine and tangent are negative, sine is positive. And you can go through and do this whole thing. Well, let's just quickly do it. In the third quadrant, is sine positive or negative? So remember, third quadrant, we've got negative x, and we've gone down this time, so it's negative y. Is sine positive or negative here? Negative. What about cosine? What about tangent? Why? Yes, because it's negative y over negative x, which is going to give us a positive number. And in the fourth quadrant, x is positive, but y is negative. So which ones are negative? Sine and tan are negative, and cosine is positive. All right, you don't have to do that every time. There's a shortcut on that. Oh, and if you're doing the reciprocal, it's the exact same. So for example, secant, which is 1 over the sine, basically you flip the x and y, right? Or the x and r. So does it change? No, they're the same. So sine would be, or cosecant would be negative in the third quadrant as well. All right, we're not going to do that. This is what you need to remember. And when they say this one should be memorized, this one should be memorized. Okay? Now, you can come up with your own wording. All right? It's totally up to you. I've heard some interesting ones. But here it is. Add sugar to coffee. That's the book, what the book says. The other one is all students. This is what Mr. Late was saying. All students take calculus. ASTC. ASTC. Anything where it's the first letter, ASTC, tells you what it is. And this tells you the positive ones. So all in the first quadrant. Okay? All ratios are positive in the first quadrant. So this is quadrant 1. Quadrant 2. What's positive in quadrant 2? Yes. Sine is the only one that's positive. All the others are negative. So the S stands for sine. Quadrant 3 is T, which stands for tangent. Tangent is the only one that is positive in the third quadrant. And C for quadrant 4 is cosine. So either add sugar to coffee, or all students take calculus, or come up with your own. I don't care. You just need to remember which are positive in which quadrant. Okay? Okay? All right, this will be the last thing we do today. All you have to tell me is if these will be positive or negative in the quadrant they are in. So, sine of 280 degrees. So the first thing is figure out what quadrant you're in. I always draw something just because I like to draw, and I'm quite good at it. That's pretty funny because I'm horrible and I draw. You wait till we start drawing actual little pictures. You'll see my artistic skill and my stickmen come out. 280. What quadrant am I in? 3, 4, right? Because this is 270, right? So we're in quadrant 4. 280 degrees. Quadrant 4. Is sine positive or negative in quadrant 4? Negative. So I don't want to know what the number is. I just want to know if it's positive or negative. Sine's negative there. And actually, just if you punch sine 280 into your calculator, you'll get a negative number. All right, that's where that comes from. Okay, tan of 7 pi over 6. So we're in rads. But because usually this is done over a 3-day period, you would now know what pi over 6 is. 30. I got 7 30-degree angles. So I'm at what? 210. So tan of 7 pi over 6 is the same as tan of 210 degrees. Which quadrant are you in for 210 degrees? 3. Is tan positive or negative in quadrant 3? Positive, because it's add sugar to, or all students take. Okay? So the answer would be positive. Cosine 10 pi over 3. What's pi over 3? 60. I got 10 of them. So it's like cos of 600. What quadrant am I in? No, you're just guessing. 4. No, you said 3, 2, 1, so I just said 4. It's the only quadrant left. Yeah, but okay. It's in quadrant 3. You just guessed though. I wanted to see if you actually do. Okay, why is it in quadrant 3? Yeah, because 1 rotation is 360. What's 1.5? It's 360 and 180. 540. And so you go another 60 degrees, right? Okay, so we're in quadrant 3. Is cosine positive or negative in quadrant 3? Add sugar to coffee. Cosine is only positive in the 4th or the 1st. Okay, the reciprocals. Cosecant negative 225. What quadrant are we in for negative 225? 2, yes. Because it's 180 to there. So we're in quadrant 2. What's cosecant? Sine. 1 over the sine value. So is sine, all you got to do is go, okay, is sine positive or negative in this quadrant? Positive, because it's add sugar, all students. So if sine's positive, the reciprocal has to be positive, so it's positive. Cotan, 13 pi over 6. Oh, this is a gross number. What's pi over 6? 30 degrees. I've got 13 30-degree angles. It's 13 times 390 degrees, but it's negative, right? So where do we end up? Quadrant 4. Because we went this way, there's 360, another 30. So we're sitting there. Cotan, so it's tan. What's tan in the fourth quadrant? Negative, so cotan's negative. And the last one, secant of 1,000. I don't even. Twice around is 720. What's 3 times around? It's over 1,000, right? 1040. So it's got to be in quadrant 4. Is that right? Does everybody agree with that? I'm not going to give you stupid stuff like that because nobody cares. 1, 2. There we go. What's secant? That's cosine, so this has to be positive. All right. That is it for today. We've gone 1,000,000 miles an hour. The only questions I want you to do is number 2, please. No. Number 1 and 2, please. Sorry. Tomorrow, please bring